300 years ago, martial god Hyun-oh Kim saved the world from destruction. Now reborn as Kim Joo-hyuk, he discovers that his disciples from the past have returned as the Constellations. With this revelation, he sets out on a journey to find them, embarking on a quest that defies time itself. We begin this thrilling tale in one of the world's top 3 hunter training institutions, the prestigious and renowned Valhalla. Each year, a tremendous number of hunters apply for the opportunity to carry the prestige of this famed institution on their backs, with their heads held high. And each year, countless dreams are shattered. For the admission rate of Valhalla is abysmal. For every 500 applicants, only one will pass. Even among those who are lucky enough to get in, the number of cadets who are good enough to graduate and carry the name of Valhalla is less than 150 every year, the cream of the crop. Today is the day of applicant orientation, which is also the official start of the entrance competition. Hopefuls have been seeded randomly to fight against each other in a one-on-one format. The institute was divided into a massive training ground, using cubicles where combatants had limited space to maneuver. An old man with gray hair stands atop a platform, surveying the entire grounds with hawk-like precision. He's Valhalla's chief combat instructor, Mr. Sang Cheo Lee, a seasoned veteran who climbed his way to the top. While he was focused on the simultaneous battles below, a voice interjected, praising this year's batch for having such a staggering number of applicants. It was a suave-looking man with a bright smile. He was the son of the Dan-yu clan, Min Jun-yu. Chief Sang Cheo explained that this much volume is to be expected, as these fights will determine an applicant's entrance rank. He asked if Min Jun had come to spectate the trial, to watch his niece in action. That's already a given. The Dan-yu clan has placed a high degree of expectation for their precious So-yeon after all. Chief's expression turned serious at the mention of So-yeon-yu. Purple hair and red eyes, carrying a katana with a calm and collected demeanor. She's the prodigy from the Dan-yu clan, one of the 5 great clans of South Korea's So-yeon-yu. When she was only 10 years old, she was already wielding mana, akin to the level of a talented high schooler. By the time she hit 13, infusing her own mana into her blade already come naturally to her. At the age of 16, she challenged the elite hunters of her clan to a grueling sparring match and easily dispatched a horde of talented fighters, achieving total victory. Or at least that's what's written on her public records. Aside from that, Chief Sang Cheo asked Min Jun if there's more to the story than what the public knows. The man's voice turned intense for a moment. What he would say next would be hard to believe. So Yeon-yu has recently contacted their clan's guardian constellation. That bit of information shocked the chief to the core. He stumbled in his words a little bit, seeking confirmation. If what was said was the truth, Min Jun confidently confirmed, which explains the heavy support and expectations for the young lady's future. You see, there's a very special reason why the 5 great clans of Korea are titled as thus. It's almost entirely because of their so-called guardian constellations. Each clan is associated with one. A normal hunter can receive a blessing from a guardian constellation, or those who are a little luckier or mightier might be able to form a contract with these deities. But the guardian constellations of the 5 great clans are in a whole other league. They are qualitatively different from your run-of-the-mill constellations. The Dan-yu clan studies the blade according to their legendary guardian constellation, the Sword God. Mountain John clan's Spear Phantom strikes fear into the hearts of its enemies. Truth Cho clan worships and practices the teachings of the Blade King. Earlyo clan emphasizes brute force and body development, following the footsteps of the Fist King. Finally, the Peak-do clan's Bow God loves to vanquish their foes before they can close in. What constellation would you pick? Let me know in the comments below. The members of the 5 great families, each of them long-standing clans, have received the blessings of these legendary constellations. In doing so, they have been granted with outstanding talent and abilities to stand above others. However, there's a massive difference between a mere blessing and the act of communicating with the enigmatic constellations. To communicate with the guardian constellation essentially means making a direct contract. Chief Sang Cheo must admit that Dan-yu clan really hit the jackpot with their fledgling prodigy. Min Jun was proud to hear that from the chief's own mouth. So, the question stands, where in the world is So-yeon? Chief explained that her match hadn't started yet. Looking at the field of various fighters, it's safe to assume that the prodigy will take to the stage in about 30 seconds. Min Jun perked up and requested to watch his niece go sicko mode, even in sparring. The chief certainly wouldn't stop him, but if he really wanted to see the action, Min Jun could go down in the field and try to fight through all the guild scouts and reporters crowding the arena. Min Jun thought it would be too much of a hassle and requested for his senior to just bring the footage up on the screen. The chief's a little reluctant, but he's also curious about this prodigy, so he relented and brought up the live feed. So Yeon-yu looked poised for combat, confident and sharp. As the eldest daughter of the Dawn-yu clan, she already has her life planned for her, at only 17. Her first opponent for this ranking entrance competition is a young man named Joo-hyuk Kim, 17 years old with an unknown affiliation. Chief noticed that the boy seemed relaxed. Min Jun gathered that the boy would probably give up the second he found out that he was up against So-yeon. Her stance and her killer stare are the real deal. It's well known how skilled she was among her peers. Even so, Joo-hyuk seemed unamused by the pressure she was exerting. The young man even had the audacity to yawn, as if this impending fight was a massive bore. Chief Song Chihyo couldn't feel an ounce of fighting spirit on the lad. Min Jun was so self-assured that this round would be over soon. At the count of 3, So-yeon whipped her blade out of its sheath. 2, the bored young man started stretching out a little, cracking his tired bones casually. 1, So-yeon became fully immersed in her plan to absolutely decimate the opposition. When the announcer gave the signal for the fight to start, she was the first one to move, rushing in with impressive speed. While mid-rush, her blade started whirling and sucking in the air around the arena. Using the running momentum and the whirlwind vacuum, she expertly slashed down, aiming to end the spar in one move. Much to everyone's surprise, it wasn't your typical physical attack. It was a ranged wind blade. The chief praised her clean swordsmanship, especially for someone so young. Her mana control is exemplary. Joo-hyuk Kim wasn't fazed by the incoming wind blade. He still had a blank look on his face, solemn and bored. When the blade was inches away from tearing his face and body apart, the young man smiled. Bam! The sound of collision echoed throughout the whole arena. The chief was taken aback, but the sight that unfolded had an even greater effect on Min Jun. Guild scouts and reporters alike were stunned, forgetting to do their jobs for a moment. The announcer swiftly announced that for this round, Joo-hyuk Kim was the winner. He easily dispatched the hyped-up prodigy with one punch. Perhaps he's even more shocked than the spectators. He's confused as to why everyone is so weak when he's supposed to be in an era 300 years in the future. You see, 300 years ago, there was a blight on humanity's doorstep called the Tower of the End. Inside, a man who bears a striking resemblance to Joo-hyuk Kim has been battered and wounded by a masked figure. The masked man is the Tower Master, King Varsh. He laughed and praised the human for gifting him a marvelous fight. This man's no ordinary human. He's widely regarded as the martial arts god, God Hyun-oh Kim. Both combatants were fatally injured, but the martial god still had enough stamina to launch a lightning-fast kick. That swift attack against a weakened king vaporized Varsh's head into a bloody mist. To God Hyun-oh, there's nothing marvelous about this fight. All he got from it were lethal wounds, an exhausted mana pool, and a tired body. Finally ending the reign of King Varsh brought up a notification window in the corner of his eyes. Defeating the Tower Master has effectively caused the impending destruction of the world to be halted. But along with that notification, the Tower of the End started rumbling from its base. The martial god reckons that the tower is collapsing because he killed its master, effectively taking out its stable foundation. If he was at full capacity, this wouldn't have been a problem. But his wounds are deep, and they are throbbing. Just when he thought that he'd finally have a comfortable life, this BS happens. Looking back, he's been through hell and back working as a destitute hunter since young. Now, he finally saved up some money, and his name has become known far and wide. But all of that may be irrelevant now. Perhaps he should have brought his many disciples in this final battle after all. Upon thinking about it a little more, he realized that he made the right choice. If there's one thing that's undeniable, it's that King Varsh is one strong son of a gun. His disciples would have been as good as dead had they tagged along. Even in his impending doom, martial god was still thinking about the safety of his students. He couldn't help but smile bitterly. The Tower of the End finally crumbled, and his weakened body was buried under the heavy debris, losing his life. The next thing you know, he woke up in an entirely different body, as if everything that happened before was just a long nightmare. God Hyun-oh Kim, the martial god, has reincarnated in the body of 17-year-old Joo-hyuk Kim. 300 years have passed since the collapse of humanity's blight. Even so, he was quite satisfied with this reincarnation arrangement. His new body might be weak and young, but he retained all the overpowered knowledge that came from being the strongest human, the martial arts god, 3 centuries ago. He only needs to adapt quickly to this new frame, and he would undoubtedly be able to live a life of luxury and leisure that he desires. At least that would have been the case if that translucent window hadn't appeared. It was a warning that the Tower of the End would reappear in 5 years. Preparation is a must. Joo Hyuk could only scratch his head in frustration. Maybe this window has some kind of grudge against him. Now he's regretting not just throwing Varch into a pit of lava or something. But there's no use lamenting that now. This time, he'll firmly put a stop to that damn tower, once and for all. Maybe he'll be able to live a life of luxury and leisure that he didn't get, to enjoy it back in his previous life. Besides the tower warning, the window panel had another thing to show with a ding. It tasked him with reclaiming his weapons and memories. His first stop showed the right side of the 3rd floor basement in Valhalla's Chamber of Constellations. The first part about weapons should just be common sense, but the memory part was quite puzzling. Maybe the smart move is to find this Valhalla and go from there. This brings us to the current times. Day 4 of the top 10 selection matches are set to begin in this beautiful morning. The announcer politely asked those who had scheduled matches to proceed to the arena. One of the remaining participants was naturally Joo Hyuk. He took his position, opposite to a burlier young man who looks like he's at least pushing 30. The guild scouts and reporters might be here for their jobs, but it didn't stop them from cheering on their favorites. Chief noticed the drastic increase in the number of spectators for today. That's only natural, as there are members from all 5 great clans participating in this batch. Aside from those prodigies, there's an enigma that's got Chief Song Cheol's attention. The dark horse of this ranking competition, that freshman, Joo Hyuk. Today, his opponent is someone who can't be underestimated. Someone with an imposing figure, tan skin, blonde hair, and chiseled muscles. He's the eldest son and heir of the Earlyo clan, Hyuk-oh, also 17 years old. He analyzed the opponent standing up front with careful apprehension. This scrawny young man is supposed to be the one who defeated So Yeon-yu on the first day of the competition. He doesn't really look anything special. Hyuk smiled to himself. He was already imagining taking this dark horse down and solidifying his name in people's minds. With his confidence through the roof, Hyuk rudely demanded Joo Hyuk's attention. As the countdown starts, he threatens to cue the young man. Joo Hyuk skipped 300 years of life, so he wasn't up to date with the kids' slang nowadays. Hyuk had to explain that Kidi means quickly destroy. Realizing that this brute was talking trash, he clapped back, telling Hyuk to GTHL. Now, who's the one not in the know when it comes to slang? Joo Hyuk just made it up on the spot. It means go to hell, loser. And he partnered it up with the universal provocation that transcends time, a middle finger, and a sly smile.
Emotional, damn it!
The announcer hits the bell, and the round finally starts. The eldest son of the Earlyo clan, Hyuk-oh, is a very fiery young lad. From an early age, he was not inclined towards strategies, martial arts, or academics. However, he possessed an extraordinary talent in another field. Body development, he's one sturdy son of a gun, who's obsessed with training his physique. There are actions that other prodigies needed mana to perform, but he could effortlessly execute them through sheer strength. Even with just a little bit of regimented training, his body became inconceivably strong. It's the kind of physical talent that cannot be obtained solely through hard work. One must be born with it. With this alone, Hyuk-oh earned the title of a genius. And today, this is the kind of opponent that Joo Hyuk must face. Even though the announcer had signaled the start of the match, Joo Hyuk still held his dirty finger up with pride and mockery. Telling a gym bro to go to hell and calling him a loser wouldn't bode well for a normal person. Hyuk-oh was infuriated, his anger transferring to his clenched fist. Verbal battles weren't really his strong suit. The only pathetic comeback he could muster was to call Joo Hyuk a piece of trash while bum-rushing with reckless abandon. Joo Hyuk was fully aware that he didn't stand a chance in a purely physical fight, at least not with his current body. If you ask him, he'd say that this ball of muscle charging at him is the real deal. But in a real fight, having superior physical prowess alone isn't the end-all be-all. It doesn't guarantee victories. Hyuk must have been so used to dominating his opponents with just his muscles alone, so if he hasn't learned that lesson yet. But one needs extensive knowledge of martial arts to back that physicality. Joo Hyuk maintained his composure under the assault of the brute, raising one of his feet for a quick counter. He used the muscle man's momentum and shaky footwork against him, kicking the unstable leg. Hyuk stumbled, slipping into a free fall with utter confusion on his face. Hyuk wasn't going to let up. He pulled one of his hands back, timing his next attack perfectly. He has something intangible that could topple a stalwart frame, the ability to observe an opponent with perfect precision. His hand glided through the air, hitting the so-called prodigy squarely on his body. The impact behind this simple push was enough to make Hyuk bleed internally. And with that, another clean knockout. For the unknown young man, another great clan genius was toppled. This is precisely what happens when you neglect to hone other skills, where the body and mind are not in harmony. The announcer loudly declared Hyun-oh Kim as the winner of this round. He might be weaker than he was in his previous body, but hunting monsters and doing his job as a hunter shouldn't be impossible. As the loud cheering blared from the crowd, the young man walked away. A lot of people were starting to pay attention to this ranking competition's dark horse. Those with untrained eyes reckon that Hyuk must have just tripped in a freak accident. It's not like him to fall so easily against a simple attack after all. But those with experience and knowledge kept their thoughts to themselves. That includes the head of the Earlyo clan, Battle King Hyun-oh, 48 years old. He quietly mocked the fools that called Hyuk's attack simple. Even though his son, Hyuk, never cared to learn martial arts, he's still capable enough to easily dodge punches from any of his peers. But that mysterious dark horse crafted a scenario to land a truly unavoidable blow. His son fell for Hyuk's obvious taunting and charged in emotionally. Moreover, Hyuk even used mana that he usually never employs. The brute was clearly aiming to one-shot the opponent out of rage. However, in that split second, Hyun-oh Kim dodged the incoming fierce attack with a slight tilt of his head, with no wasted movement at all. Thinking that he would hit, Hyuk's center of balance was thrown into disarray, failing to control his forward momentum. At that precise moment, a slight tip on the leg easily turned a bad situation into something worse. That open palm strike was guaranteed to hit. There's simply no way to dodge or react to that. This means that an unknown lad moved one step faster than a prodigy could see or think. The moment Hyuk started his charge, the result was already written in stone. Battle King clenched his fist in excitement. His son might have lost, but he spotted a truly monstrous talent. There are already quiet murmurs between some of the scouts and reporters in the viewing deck. It looks like some people with keen observation abilities have recognized the value of that unaffiliated freshman. At least not all the scouts are fools. Hyun-oh Kim doesn't know it yet, but he just opened the floodgates that have never been opened before. Battle King himself was already determined to bring him into the Earlyo clan, no matter what the cost. Day 4 is a gauntlet of fights for the participants. The next battle on the schedule is a noteworthy one. For the darling of the crowd, Irene Choi, who will be participating. Her opponent is none other than Hyun-oh Kim, who's extremely disgusted at the sight of the pervs in the audience. Those people look a little old to be declaring their love for a 17-year-old girl, a civilized MC. Impossible. This match would mark the final battle of the ranking competition. The combatants are the dark horse, Hyun-oh Kim, and the second daughter of the Truth Choi clan, Irene Choi. Everyone's been waiting for this one, so the announcer didn't waste another second and signaled the start of the fight. Both fighters took their time observing each other from a distance. Irene was holding a combat stance, while Hyun-oh remained loose and relaxed. She had her hand on the handle of her blade, ready to explode at any moment. He had a slight smile on his face, seemingly pleased with how she was approaching this battle. The spectators, on the other hand, were extremely confused. They were expecting a hard-fought battle right from the get-go, and what they were getting was a staring contest. Hyun-oh also noticed that this young woman was being patient, waiting for him to make the first move. He had to admit that since Irene's trying to read the situation, at least she was better than the rest of the youngsters in this ranking competition. With a confident smile, Hyun-oh welcomed the challenge wholeheartedly. He stepped forward, not running or rushing, just walking with his hands in his pockets as though he were on an afternoon stroll. Hyun-oh never took his eyes off his prey, proving that you don't need to look like a hungry monster to be intimidating. Arya maintained her composure, clutching the handle of her blade even tighter. Once he got into her strike zone, sparks of lightning escaped from the slightly drawn sword. The audience immediately made a ruckus at the display of attribute transformation at just 17 years of age. This batch of freshmen really is outstanding. Joo-hyuk stopped his casual stroll with just enough distance to draw her out to attack with steel and lightning. He took another step, just enough to entice her even further. Irene Choi took the bait. Anyone with some experience in fighting would think that it was her golden opportunity to pounce. Within a split second, she closed the remaining gap between their positions, slashing wide. Her electrifying attack would have knocked out anyone in the tournament in a flash. But Joo-hyuk is just built different. Irene just wasted her golden opportunity by cutting the air and not the foe. He positioned himself to her blind spot to the side. As a friendly advice, he told her not to broadcast her attacks with her eyes. Doing so makes it too easy to dodge. Irene's blade was in an awkward position, her stance was off, and the enemy was free to do whatever he wanted. She tried to recover and get a visual on Joo-hyuk, but it was simply too late. The young man was already primed and ready to smack her with a vicious body shot. Feeling the force behind that simple attack was enough to show her the difference between them. Still, Joo-hyuk didn't expect that she was more skillful than he initially thought. Ari managed to correct her posture and sword grip with impressive reaction time. She's the first one to block an attack from Joo-hyuk in this entire competition, but it came at a stunning price. He had to admit that it was kind of impressive for her to do that. No wonder it didn't feel like he was hitting her flesh. Irene Choi's body quivered, reeling from the impact, reverberating throughout her body. She's never seen someone so powerful and so young. Joo-hyuk soundlessly closed the gap once again. He tapped his fist on the shaky blade, and the fluctuation stopped. He looked at her straight in the eyes. He could have ended the match right there and then, but he didn't. That's because he wanted to test another attack. He wants to see if Irene could block another one. There was seemingly not enough distance to generate enough force for a meaningful attack, but just a single inch of space was enough for him to unleash ridiculous amounts of force. Okay, Bruce Lee. He aimed it at her sword, thinking that maybe she'd hold strong, but anyone wouldn't have been able to take something that ferocious at point-blank range. With a heavy thud, Irene Choi dropped to the ground. It was another impressive knockout. Equal rights, equal fights. Joo-hyuk's expression didn't even fluctuate. He was just curious about that sword-drawing technique that she displayed earlier. He couldn't help but feel that the skill felt oddly familiar. He might have seen it before with a slightly different stance. Well, it doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, he won the entire freshman ranking tournament. Joo-hyuk Kim's name was firmly ingrained as the first place on this year's Valhalla admissions, with Irene Choi at the second. The rest aren't even worth mentioning. Joo-hyuk Kim, an unknown young man without a large clan backing him, just wiped the floor with heirs and prodigies. He nonchalantly stepped out of the arena as if he just did a light exercise. As soon as he stepped out of the gate, microphones and questions started mobbing him from out of nowhere. Reporters and guild scouts were foaming at the mouth for the chance to recruit such a promising young man to their small-time guilds or comment for their publication. If there's anything that Joo-hyuk hates, it's the kind of people who are entirely opportunistic for their own gain. With his whole chest, he roared at everyone to piss the hell off. Joo-hyuk Kim's meltdown in front of the press got the internet forums buzzing about the possibility that he might be a psychopath, with his tendency to flip off people he doesn't like. What a give a Chad. Some people got a hold of the video of him telling the press to piss off and found it funny, but his cursing didn't sit well with some. Anonymous commenters were quickly divided on their opinions regarding the rising star of Valhalla. Some were worried that his attitude would land him in big trouble with some clans, but that shouldn't be a problem for his skills alone, could probably get him welcomed anywhere with open arms. After the admission rankings, the semester immediately came into full swing in Valhalla. The freshmen were required to attend the opening ceremony. Of course, that includes Joo-hyuk. A speaker kept on going on and on about the Institute's 100-year history, which Joo-hyuk found extremely boring and unimportant. In the ceremony, he noticed some students stealing glances at him. For a plethora of reasons. All he had to do was stare back, and they would quickly turn their eyes away from the top student of this batch. Maybe he stood out too much yesterday, and he's getting some unnecessary attention as a result. Still, he hasn't forgotten the only reason why he enrolled in this school: reach Valhalla's Chamber of Constellations and reclaim his weapons and memories. He just needs to get his stuff and dip out. Who cares what these kids think? Besides, there's something else he wants to check out. Thankfully, the excruciatingly long opening ceremony of the semester ended. The freshmen were guided to their respective virtual combat training rooms. Former Truth Choi Guild executive and a current Valhalla instructor Egun Kim was lamenting, getting stuck with his stacked freshman class. Up front was So Yeon-yu and Irene Choi, prodigies of their respective clans. The big one in the middle emitting bad vibes is Si-hae-yeok-oh, the quintessential gym bro. He thought that the class assignments would be random, but he still got 3 out of the 5 major clan babies under his care. And to make matters worse, he's also stuck with an enigma that no one has figured out yet. The mysterious student that swept through the rankings and obtained the top spot. Trying to teach geniuses from the great clan is bad enough, now he also has to deal with an unpredictable variable. He was starting to panic, so he took a deep breath and calmed himself down. He cleared his throat and cordially introduced himself as the class's homeroom instructor. First things first, he wanted them to see just what Valhalla was all about with the press of a button. A deep rumbling occurred inside the classroom, stirring everyone into a panic. Once the rumbling died down, the 4 walls of the classroom were gone, replaced by an open field surrounded by greenery. Joo-hyuk remained calm, but even he had no clue what this place was. They were indoors one moment and out in the next. Instructor Egun reached for the blade tied on his back. He warned the students to try and stop themselves from showing any signs of aggression. Out of nowhere, the spacious open field has been filled with disgusting creatures. They had gray skin and red eyes, some held blunt weapons, and they varied in size. The students were surrounded on all sides, forgot about aggression, and most of them were showing signs of terror. But some were calm and composed. Si-hae-yeok-oh quietly assessed the situation. The monsters around them were orcs and goblins. There should be at least 100 of them. These beasts looked like they were up to no good, salivating and fixated on the young humans ahead. It started with one monster, and the rest followed suit. The horde had begun their charge. But before they could get their grubby hands on the freshmen, a powerful barrier spawned, halting their advance. They tried to jump, slide, and smack against the dome of protection to no avail. Instructor Egun was quite pleased with the reaction of his new students. Most were experiencing real terror while under the safety of the defense barrier. He broke the horrifying silence by calling Joo-hyuk Kim to the front of the class. Joo-hyuk casually strode toward Egun's class podium. The instructor playfully asked him if he could handle all the monsters outside the barrier by himself. He had to clarify if Egun was talking about the monsters that were just waiting and itching to tear his fellow students apart. Joo-hyuk paused for a second, seriously considering the question that the instructor posted. Egun smiled, thinking that this was a clever way to put the top of the class in his place. Since most students have only seen monsters in books, only a select few have seen them in real life, so fear is a natural response. He just wants Joo-hyuk to stop pretending to consider the challenge and say no. Egun can only start his class as soon as he stifles the top dog's ego. Joo-hyuk must have realized what this guy was doing and smirked mischievously. Instructor Egun started feeling that something bad was going to happen because of that smirk. Seeing Joo-hyuk laugh, he doubled down and pressed the young man for an answer to the challenge. Joo-hyuk answered with a simple, "Of course." Egun was infuriated, thinking that this brat was still showing off. If that's what he wants, he can give it a try then. As far as the young man knows, there was never any mention of doing something like this on the first day of school. If the instructor wants to spring a test like this out of nowhere, it's only fair that he gets a reward if he succeeds. Egun was getting more and more ticked off. Not only is this young man posturing that he can fight more than 100 monsters, but he's also even demanding a prize. Joo-hyuk has already cornered the instructor with a dilemma on the first day of school. Mr. Instructor promised that if he could take out all the monsters, he'd be granted one thing, as long as it was within a teacher's authority.
Congratulations, you played yourself.
The young man thought for a second and gave his answer. Although the promise sounds a little lackluster, he'll still accept the deal for the heck of it. Egun warned him that monsters implemented in this system attack just like real monsters. Joo-hyuk cut him off. Enough with the yapping. He just wants a sword. He can't go out there without a proper weapon, right? Making him fight a horde barehanded would be a little unfair. Egun reluctantly relented and unbuckled his sword strap. He handed his personal blade to the student to use. Joo-hyuk briefly inspected the blade and found it satisfactory enough. The defense barrier opened a gap wide enough for one person to go through. Orcs and goblins were just waiting for their prey. Egun backed himself into a corner. Now he must observe closely and try to maintain a semblance of respect. Every student in the class had their eyes glued to their classmate, venturing out into a pit of monstrosities by his lonesome. Joo-hyuk slowly drew the blade, the artificial light of the field, making the blade shine. His first draw claimed the lives of multiple beasts in one slash. He had a murderous grin on his face. There wasn't a hint of fear in that face, just the ecstatic bloodthirst of a martial god.
That's why he's the GOAT!
Joo-hyuk expertly held the instructor's blade like it was his own. Every beast was either beheaded or mutilated by the brilliant flares of the blade in bloody glory. Even when reinforcements came from behind, he didn't even flinch a little. He just calmly turned the sword's handle around and drove it into the incoming enemies. What followed were sounds of gurgling blood and stabbed flesh. It has been 300 years since he held a sword. It's not that bad of a feeling as he slowly gets back into the groove of things. In his past life, the world was a chaotic mess because of the existence of monsters, so he was forced to use whatever weapons he could find. Farming sickles, blunt weapons, tiny digging shovels, you name it, he probably killed using it. But still, the martial god has always been partial towards the simplicity and adaptability of a sword. After clearing up a bunch of brainless monsters, he sensed some hint of danger from behind. It was an orc that stood a whole head higher than him, already halfway through, swinging a wooden club mercilessly. Joo-hyuk shifted his body to the side, leaving after images without an ounce of wasted movement. Just as he initially thought, these artificial orcs and goblins have a set amount of attack patterns that are easy to decode. He remembers Egun saying that these were system-implemented monsters, but these are some well-made fakes, if you ask him. His classmates watched with their mouths wide open. They'd never seen someone their age be this dominant, this godlike. Instructor Egun was starting to be. It should be impossible for this young man to do what he's doing with a cheap iron sword. Each swing doesn't even have any mana imbued in it. There's no application of swift swordplay as well, yet he's slicing through flesh and bones like butter. It's like Joo-hyuk's sword was swallowing the monsters hungrily. So Yeon-yu clutched her arm, imagining herself outside that barrier. She couldn't possibly do what that guy was doing. Stehae-hyuk was in the same boat. He might be confident with his physique, but this type of supremacy is just otherworldly. Arin Choi could not take her eyes away from the beautiful swordsmanship of the man who defeated her in the finals the day before. She blushed and clutched her chest. No one has ever seen what Joo-hyuk was showing them. With the last batch of monsters taken care of, he sheathed the sword and demanded to go down to the Chamber of Constellations. Surrounded by the dead bodies of simulated beasts, there wasn't even a scratch or a wrinkle in his uniform. He wiped out an entire horde of angry orcs and goblins without getting a single drop of blood on his clothes.
Someone cooked here.
Joo-hyuk slyly turned towards the instructor, holding Egun to his promise. Mr. Instructor didn't know what to say. He dug his grave and now he must lie in it. After that demonstration in the virtual combat training room, the rest of the class was standard until it was time for dismissal. Egun formally ended the first lecture. Considering that the students must be tired, he instructed them to go straight to their dorms for some rest. After the lengthy first day lecture and orientation, one student in particular was burned out. Joo-hyuk thought about what kind of monster would design a lecture class as long as this one. He would have preferred killing monsters and putting his life on the line, instead of this boring crap. Come to think of it, he only ever passed on what he knew to his previous disciples. He's never been to a proper school before. Class ended just as the sun was starting to set, painting the sky with a beautiful hue. Although the class was deathly boring, he still got some information from it, especially stuff concerning the constellations. He's starting with zero information in that regard, as there were no such things as constellations 3 centuries ago. He learned that a constellation is just a term for those who were transformed into godhood for their great achievements. Most of these constellations make contracts where hunters become their divine artifacts in exchange for special powers. Another thing he learned was that Korea's Valhalla has the 3rd largest compendium of divine artifacts in the whole world. That's about the extent of info that he could absorb without passing out. Everything discussed about swordplay and how to kill monsters was trash. Clearing his mind, the first thing on his to-do list is to go back to the dormitory to start his martial arts training, to supplement his ridiculously weak body. On the way to his in-campus accommodation, he noticed that someone was tailing him. It was Arin Choi. It doesn't seem like she's looking for trouble or anything like that. Back in Valhalla's staff lounge, Instructor Egun was trauma dumping about his horrible first day to other faculty members. Chief Song Cheol sipped his coffee and commented that Egun had a tough day. But now that the young instructor has calmed down, he honestly admitted that he's more embarrassed than anything. It's just that the kid is an anomaly. Logically speaking, what he accomplished doesn't make any sense for a high school student. The gun spawned 120 virtual monsters just to get the students in line, but a single young man killed them all. A high school student who shouldn't have even encountered a monster yet. Even now, Egon was still trying to make sense of what happened in that virtual room. Chief admitted that it was strange indeed, for there was nothing special about the kid's record. He doesn't have any background in the field that Valhalla knows of. Joo-hyuk Kim is an orphan who came from a run-of-the-mill orphanage in a highly dangerous area. A gun suspects that the kid's background must have been forged, but the chief personally verified that it wasn't. Besides, what would be the point of faking his way into Valhalla, only to make a scene at the entrance ceremony? The only clue they have to the young man's motives is the fact that he wants to get into the Chamber of Constellations. He'll be allowed in if he passes the first semester anyway, so it shouldn't be a problem to expedite the process, granting access to the first basement floor. Since the chief brought Egon to teach here, he should at least take this much responsibility. Besides, the lower floors are restricted, but anyone can enter the first basement floor. It shouldn't be a problem to get an outstanding student earlier than usual. Egon is starting to worry about this upcoming year of dealing with such a wild card. Aside from Joo-hyuk, the 3 kids from the 5 great clans are also intimidating to teach. Keeping one noteworthy student is already hard enough, not to mention 4. Chief assured him that another instructor had it worse, for there's an exchange student from the infamous Bentrick clan in the class next door. The transferee in question is a cousin of the Bentrick family, Rochdale Bentrick. Even someone like Egon has heard of the scandal that expelled that kid from a private academy in the United Kingdom. Hearing that another teacher was suffering worse than him made him sigh in relief. He could thank the heavens for not giving him such a known troublemaker from an esteemed clan. Suddenly, his situation doesn't seem so bad at all. Back at the gates of Valhalla, Joo-hyuk just stared blankly at the person tailing him. Irene Choi had a neutral expression on her angelic face. Joo-hyuk doesn't want to have another staring contest with her, so he asks what she wants. Her voice was soft and quiet, muttering a request for him to teach her. Seeing his marvelous performance against a horde of 120 monsters, Irene Choi wanted to learn Joo-hyuk's swordplay. What kind of playing with swords are we talking about? Joo-hyuk's first response was one of utter confusion. What was this lady talking about? Irene explained that she wanted to learn the way he fought the monsters from earlier. He picked his ears and sternly refused the request. She wanted to know why he won't teach her. I guess young ladies from prominent families are not used to rejection. He doesn't really have any reason to refuse, he just doesn't want to teach some stranger. If that's all there is to this, Joo-hyuk will be off to get back to his dorm. Irene was quite stubborn. She just kept on repeating her request to learn swordplay from him. Now he's starting to get pissed. This girl just can't take no for an answer. It wasn't charming at all. It was getting annoying being hounded for lessons. He emphasized that he has absolutely no intention of teaching her, so she should get lost. Walking off into the sunset, he left the second daughter of Truth-Cho clan. She still held that blank expression on her face. Another day, another BS lecture in the center of Korea's hunter excellence, Valhalla. Joo-hyuk arrived early in class, and so did Si-hyuk. It turned out that they were seatmates. He was bored, but fidgeting in his desk beats listening to the droning sound of useless lectures. Looking at his palms, he recalled his findings from last night's training session. He didn't expect much to begin with, but this current body is even worse than he initially thought. It seems like he has no hope of training martial arts, in a conventional sense. He can't do anything with his meager mana pool. To make things worse, he can't even control what little mana he does have. At least this problem could be alleviated once he finds a particular item. And to do that, he might have to hone his control a little more. While he was lost in thought, some punk barged into the classroom looking for him. It was a blonde and smug-looking punk, and a timid foreign young lady. He's the branch family member of the Bentrick family, Rochdale Bentrick. The girl was Rochdale's attendant, Uriah de Palace. Both were freshmen. What would happen when a spoiled brat and a former martial arts god meet in a classroom? Let's find out. Joo-hyuk asked these strangers who they were. Rochdale didn't like that. He thought that this guy was an uneducated fool that doesn't even know he was from the prestigious Bentrick bloodline. But Rochdale chose to calm down and introduced himself with pride. It seems like the situation demands that he cut to the chase, so he does and asks Joo-hyuk if he wants power. He might be a branch family member, but the resources that he has access to are bountiful. In most clans, it's difficult to come into power outside the main family line. Branch families are treated as an outside inferior entity. However, with Beak Mask, as the Bentrick family's guardian constellation, things work a little differently. Normally, guardian constellations that are S-class or higher select people based on some strict criteria. Once you pass, they will bestow their blessing and power accordingly. Bentrick clan is not structured like that. The members themselves are the ones to choose who their guardian constellation makes a contract with. Beak Mask will bless that selected person without dissent. Due to this unique method of power structure, the Bentrick clan gained power all over Europe. Since they select contractors regardless of direct lineage, even minor branches could possess equal authority as the main family. And Rockdale Bentrick is a testament to that. He has the entire family's power backing him, and he grew up as an arrogant punk. However, he got into hot water not too long ago. He caused some trouble at his previous academy in England, and fell out of the main family's favor. They kicked him out, and he found himself in Valhalla. He might have been thrown out of a cushy life, and things might have turned out for the worse, but it's fine. He already got what he wanted from this place. After all, his attendant, Yuria de Palace. And even though he's fallen out of favor for now, he's confident that he'll be reinstated after doing great things under the Bentrick name. Something that even that overbearing woman will be satisfied with. The first thing on his list is to bring in the top freshman of this year's batch, Joo-hyuk Kim, under his circle of influence. Rockdale promised that if Joo-hyuk agreed to work for him, he could wrangle a deal to give Joo-hyuk the blessing of Bentrick clan's constellation. This fool has been yapping on, and Joo-hyuk finally called him out for yammering. That disrespectful tone and choice of words did not sit well with the brat. Even Yuria felt fear for what Joo-hyuk might suffer for speaking out of turn. Rockdale got serious and asked him to repeat what he said. Joo-hyuk had to stress that he's not interested in some constellation or whatever, since Blondie looks like he has a hard time understanding simple concepts. He already expressed his disinterest, and Blondie was still yapping. Maybe he just has a hard time understanding social cues. Being lambasted in front of the whole class obviously angered the dumb blonde. He even dared to call Joo-hyuk an uneducated, filthy brat. Things were starting to spiral out of control until an authoritative voice urged Rockdale to get back to his own classroom. Blondie turned around abruptly, getting even more heated as someone dared to order him around. It turned out to be Chief Combat Instructor San Chio Lee. He asserted that this is Valhalla, not England. No matter how great the Bentrick family may be, obeying instructors is paramount in this place. Rockdale recognized the old man, and even he was wise enough not to offend a venerated figure. He gritted his teeth and swallowed his rage, then stormed out of the classroom with his attendant. He shot a final glance at Joo-hyuk and warned him that they'd meet again. Our boy wasn't bothered, even just a little bit. Another school day has come to pass, as Joo-hyuk peacefully strolls back to his dorm after all the useless lectures. Just like yesterday, he gained nothing new. He still hasn't entered the Chamber of Constellations too. He even got involved with a blonde weirdo this morning. Since Guild Scouts can't enter school premises, he thinks that they're trying to get to him through students and instructors. Getting them off his back is another problem to add to the pile. Speaking of problems, another one just keeps on cropping up. Just like yesterday, Orain Choi followed him closely to request a swordplay lesson. Joo-hyuk was already in a foul mood, and this girl just can't take a hint. In Valhalla's dormitories, almost everyone is treated equally, except for those who have enough resources to afford a VIP room as their in-campus accommodation. This room was a lot fancier than the ordinary ones. There's classy woodwork everywhere. The lighting is perfectly tuned to the atmosphere. It's a perfect room by all accounts. The only stain is the brat that it belongs to. A very vile individual that's prone to furious outbursts. The worst spoiled brat in Valhalla, Rockdale Bentrick. The target of his rage today is nobody but Joo-hyuk Kim. He can't stand the fact that that lowly bastard dared to humiliate him in front of his peers. So he instructed Yuria to get in touch with someone named Dizura, for there's somebody in this institute that needs to be dealt with accordingly. He gave out the order, but Yuria didn't seem to be scurrying to make his will happen. The poor young lady just stood there, looking terrified. Rockdale marched towards her direction and aggressively grabbed her by the hair. He posed a question that demanded a very truthful answer. Rockdale wanted to know if Yuria thinks that she's still the eldest daughter of the disgraced Palace clan. He threatened to just throw her out like trash, cutting her off from the mercy of the Bentrick family completely. That threat spurred her to answer in fear. She knew her place, even if that means suffering the abuse of this asshole. Rakdal might be a prick, but he's a rich prick. He wants Dizera to be informed that they're dealing with some freshman punk. Also, Rakdal heard that there's a boy from the Sunrise clan in the second-year class. He wants her to arrange a meeting as soon as possible. Let's get out of that miserable VIP room and look inside Joo Hyuk's dorm, where he's currently cultivating. Sitting in a meditative pose, with his back as straight as an arrow, mana was swirling all around his body. Once the invisible force started dissipating, his training session winded down. With a deep breath, sweat poured down all over him. He might just be sitting, but cultivating like this is no joke. But even after all the tough labor, the only conclusion he could arrive at was that his current body was seriously worthless. Focusing his mana seemed impossible. He recalled what happened earlier before getting home. Ari matched his every step from behind, even though he was trying to ignore her annoying presence. They went on this silent follow game until Joo Hyuk ran out of patience. He turned around and seriously asked her what her deal was. She's been following him for so long that they've arrived in front of the dorms. Just like a broken record, her only dialogue option was to ask to be taught his brand of swordplay. She just doesn't know when to give up. Maybe he'll have to force her to leave. So he quoted a price, 10 million won, or a little more than $7,000. If they're going to do this, that's the price of his tutelage. Aryan thought for a second and nodded. Joo Hyuk thought that such a high price tag would be enough to deter her, so he bid him goodbye. The next thing you know, she was asking for his phone. Thinking of playing this out, he handed his phone and asked what she needed it for. She started tapping on it, entering her number and his contacts. This way, it'll be easier to send the money. At first, he was confused, perplexedly taking his phone back. Once he saw the screen light up with a notification, it all became clear. 100 million won just entered his bank account. That's almost $75,000, 10 times his asking price. He might have underestimated the wealth of a daughter from a great clan. Now he's on the hook for a training session. Joo Hyuk smiled and promptly repeated his answer from the very start. Denying the money transfer, he rejected her once again. That was a bit of a surprise. A student shouldn't have that kind of financial power without a second thought, right? If he does take her in as a student, he'd have to teach her properly. That's why he asked for so much only to get the tables turned on him. Money won't be a problem once he finds that thing anyway. So will the issue of his poor mana pool. He put his jacket on, stepped into his shoes, and prepared to head out, a shovel sticking out of his backpack. It's about time to look for his secret warehouse. His destination, the mountain ridges, are behind the grounds of Valhalla. Joo Hyuk quietly ventured deep into the wooded areas. Before coming to this school, he checked other places, but most of the secret warehouses he hid 300 years ago were already destroyed. After investigating, he estimated that there should be at least 4 secret stashes still in existence, though only 3 of them are likely to remain. Among those 3, one should be in the mountains of Valhalla. It's about time to start the search for his own treasures. Concentrating intensely, the little bit of mana that he was able to cultivate started spreading across the land. He designed his stash with a marble that reacts to a specific kind of mana, so he can detect the location with his own methods. It's the most efficient way to hide treasures. It didn't take too long for him to get a hit, finding this special marble in a clearing. Rushing towards the light of that marble, Joo Hyuk took out the shovel and started digging. He hadn't even gotten deep, and he was already huffing for air because of his weak body. If he'd only knew that his physique would be this bad, he wouldn't have buried something so important so deeply. Because of the mere existence of the Tower of the End, 300 years ago, he needed to make these secret warehouses. The world was on the verge of destruction, and there was practically nowhere to store his wealth, so he created secret stashes and crammed all his stuff in. Now that time has passed, he can only hope that everything inside is still fine. Digging through that soft soil took him an entire night. When he got a glimpse of the entrance to his stash, the sun was already starting to rise. Deep beneath the surface, a vault door was buried, the special marble lighting up. He patted all over the surface, looking for the keyhole. After a little bit of time, he finally found it. He started gathering the last bit of mana in his system. For regular keys won't fit in this thing. What it needs is a clump of intricately woven thread-like mana. Making a magical key out of thin air with the finest details imaginable is supremely difficult. It's a very effective security feature. He inserted the magic key into the keyhole and turned it, and a heavy clunk sounded. Joo Hyuk was worried that it wouldn't work, but it looked like he hadn't lost his touch. The vault can now be opened, and his fortune from a bygone era is waiting below. Sunlight touched the stash for the first time in 3 centuries. Joo Hyuk carefully dropped down. He excitedly surveyed the boundless riches around him. With a delighted smile, he can finally reap the benefits of being such a paranoid hoarder from back then. Seeing the sunlight make his gold glisten like stars made him a little nostalgic. It's like seeing his babies once more.
Here comes the money.
Here we go.
With this many resources, he doesn't have to worry about running out of cash anymore. But he's also looking for something more specific. He carefully surveyed the 4 corners of his stash house, and his eyes immediately gravitated towards his target. There they were, sitting snugly among the countless gold coins, the storage stones. He stored some mana in these rocks to maintain the secret warehouses for however long. He never thought that the day would come when he'd have to absorb their contents for himself. The absorption process was extremely easy too. He put the mana in 3 centuries ago and can easily take it out 3 centuries later. A rich and thick amount of high-quality mana started seeping and flowing through his whole body. He just loves these rocks. They make him feel like he's practically overflowing with power when his body's latent talent is so trash. Joo Hyuk sucked in quite a lot, but he didn't even make a dent with how dense and bountiful the mana each rock carries. His priority for this excursion is the storage stones first and foremost. While here, he'll also bring the lighter gems rather than taking out the heavy bars of solid gold. A few hours later, he still needed to attend classes, even though he was practically set for multiple lifetimes. When he got in his seat, the fatigue and exhaustion of digging all night long caught up to him. His body was practically throbbing in pain. He made a conscious mental note to remember not to bury his secret warehouses so deep next time. The soreness of his body cannot be worth it just for a little more security. While he was reeling from the pain, he didn't notice that Irene Choi had been kneeling near his desk the entire time. Seeing her there made him flinch. Just like yesterday and the day before, she's asking for some swordplay lessons. At this point, he wasn't even annoyed anymore. She's just not the type to let things go. From what Joo Hyuk has investigated after reincarnating, Irene's clan should be the most skilled in swordplay among the 5 great clans. So why in the world is she asking a classmate for a lesson? Curiosity got the best of him, and he asked her why she was so set on a fellow freshman, when she could learn from someone more qualified in her clan. She averted her gaze and insisted that she must learn from him. As to why that is, her reasoning was simple. Irene's been around expert swordsmen all her life, but she's never seen anyone who wields a blade better than Joo Hyuk. If that's the case, then wouldn't she be better off learning under her dad, the literal head of the Truth Chua clan? Joo Hyuk is pretty good, but that old man should be better than him when it comes to the Choi family's specific fighting style. Before Irene could explain her complicated circumstance that concerns her father, Instructor Egun barged into the room, calling Joo Hyuk into the faculty office. He's pretty sure that he hasn't caused trouble lately, so why was he being summoned? Egun assured him that this would just be about what he asked for before, the bet they had in the virtual room. Smiling brightly, Joo Hyuk stood up and immediately followed Egun. He took a few casual steps, excited to cash in after betting on himself against the orcs and goblins. Irene wanted to stop him for a moment, but he just ignored her soft plea to wait. She must have realized that he didn't really owe her anything, and her head drooped down, staring into the ground. Joo Hyuk's footsteps halted for a second, as she simply gave her time, 6 a.m. tomorrow. He will be at the school training grounds, and she could tag along if she wanted. Irene wasn't expecting such a sharp turn of attitude from the seemingly cold-hearted man. Hearing no response, Joo Hyuk looked at her and asked if her mind had changed about those lessons she kept on ragging about. Irene snapped out of her stupor, fervently shaking her head, before Joo Hyuk changed his mind. She promised to be there on time tomorrow, and he continued heading for the faculty office. Inside, Instructor Egun took a seat, and Joo Hyuk respectfully stood straight. He's just one step away from his primary goal here. There's no need for any more shenanigans. Since Egun has to get to his next class soon, he'll just make the explanation short and sweet. First, Joo Hyuk's request to access the Chamber of Constellations has been approved, but the young man will be strictly restricted to the first basement floor only. That didn't make sense in his ears. Egun had to explain that his access would not extend past the point of the first basement. Joo-hyuk just smiled and nodded, telling the instructor that he understood. He also asked when he could go. If it's okay with him, tonight would be fine, as Igun can escort him to the site. Joo-hyuk hurriedly answered that he would be here later. Instructor Igun was a little bit shocked at the unexpected respectfulness. He thought that the kid was going to make a fuss about not being allowed to go down the deeper levels, but he just accepted. That would be all for now. They can both go back to class. Joo-hyuk was so hyped that he even called his instructor sir. With a lighter pep in his step, he slid the faculty office door open. Igun's eyes never left him for a moment. After another grueling day of listening to senseless drivel, known as lectures, night came, and the main event was about to start. Igun was in his casual clothes, looking like a normal 24-year-old. He led Joo-hyuk to the place they'd discussed since the first day of school. The treasure of Valhalla Academy, the Chamber of Constellations. Joo-hyuk seriously surveyed the area, his glance touching everything in sight. Right from the site's gates, the intensity of the security can be felt. A set of tough armed guards posted up. On the other side, another set was assigned, constantly communicating with their control center for anything out of the ordinary. Joo-hyuk commented on the heavy-duty security that was tighter than Valhalla's main gate. That's just how important the chamber is. It's valuable enough to push the institute to one of the top 3 academies in the whole world. Well, apart from the veteran guards, just looking at the outer walls would surely deter a lot of people with unclean intentions. The wall of the whole structure is covered with all sorts of complicated magic circles, the likes of which even Joo-hyuk was unfamiliar with. Everything is completely covered, except for the entrance. Thinking about it, he asked the instructor if he could ask a question. The query was what would theoretically happen if he broke the rules and went to the second basement floor. Would doing so make him a criminal? Well, as far as Igun knows, that's not really punishable by law, but Valhalla's internal affairs will hold him responsible and expulsion would be certain. Besides, a normal student would have a mental breakdown before they could get kicked out if they dared to stray away from the first basement floor. The man inside the second basement floor is so dangerously powerful that it could short-circuit someone's brain. Those who encounter it without proper preparation will have their mind fragmented, losing their grasp of reality. So basically, trespassing into the deeper floors would result in a mind break and getting kicked out of school. That shouldn't be a big deal, right? Igun felt a little disturbed that this kid would ask him about punishments for breaking the rules before going in. Considering how eccentric Joo-hyuk is, it's hard to put barging into the second floor beyond him. The instructor had to convince himself that there was no way that was the case. Joo-hyuk is still the top student of a stacked batch. He wouldn't jeopardize a bright future out of curiosity, right? Igun just has to trust that the kid knows that it's better to stay in school. Joo-hyuk only has 30 minutes to look around. When the time is up, he needs to quickly get out. He casually waved at Igun goodbye, reassuring the instructor that he'd be back soon. As soon as he entered the empty room of the lobby, Joo-hyuk opened the translucent window in front of him. The mission to reclaim his weapons and memories dictates that he'll need to enter the third basement floor of the chamber. He doesn't really care if he gets expelled for doing so or whatever. This is the only reason he came to Valhalla in the first place. So, his initial goal was to go down to deeper, within the allotted 30 minutes. Walking around, he started noticing that there were so many stairs in this building that he still hadn't seen a single room. Stepping out of the stairs, he happened upon a strange hall, filled with locked vaults from left and right. It looked like a bizarre prison. As far as he knows, the Chamber of Constellations starts on the first basement floor, so this should be it. It doesn't look like this has anything to do with him, so heading further down should be the move. After walking through the hall, a little more, the translucent window flashed out against his will. It simply stated that he had met the requirements, and he would be transported to the room. Before he could think about what room that was, Joo-hyuk's figure started phasing out of sight. The next thing you know, he was enveloped by an empty darkness. Then a familiar voice referred to him by his previous name, God Hyun-oh Kim, the martial god. It's been a long time since they last saw each other. Joo-hyuk opened his eyes with cold sweat running through his back. In front of him was the final boss of the Tower of the End. There's no doubt about it, Enkain Varchu was right in front of him. The masked figure still has his carefree attitude after 300 years of the two being separated. He thinks that this reunion isn't too bad, at least until Joo-hyuk bum rushed him, landing a punch on the masked boss's face.
You're a victim!
There was no need for words when fists could do the talking more effectively. All this time, Joo Hyuk has been harboring some deep resentment against this guy. Seeing that face again triggered a deep-seated rage bubbling inside him. Varsh's trauma from getting killed in the past started cropping up. He pleaded for the martial god to wait. You see, Joo Hyuk is not that type of guy. When he sees someone like Varsh, it's on sight. The End King's face is bruised from left cheek to right as he tries to de-escalate the situation. Another whack to the wide-open face interrupted his pleading. He says stop, he says die. He says hold on, he doesn't hold on. This went on for seemingly forever until Joo Hyuk finally sobered up as Varsh pathetically lay on the empty ground. It was exhausting, but also very therapeutic for the frustrated martial god. He doesn't usually lead with his fists, but things are different for the bastard that destroyed his dreams of a comfortable future. He continued stomping down the poor villain. His wealth, his honor, the time he spent training his disciples, all of it went down the drain because of this guy. The only thing that made him pause the beatdown was when Varsh urged him to look around and identify their location. Now that Joo Hyuk was scanning the area, it was indeed wholly unfamiliar. It's just an endless expanse of nothing. Varsh explained that they're currently in the mental realm. More precisely, it's an independent space within a divine artifact. Even the End King's current form is just a manifestation of this realm. His physical body was destroyed, along with the tower 3 centuries ago. It's basically saying that his current form has always been inside this divine artifact. If that's the case, it can only mean one thing. Varsh grinned now that this brute was finally getting what he was hinting at. He started floating in the air, a massive and intricate magic circle appearing behind him. End King Varsh has become a constellation. He was expecting fanfare or some kind of amazed reaction, but Joo Hyuk just stood there with a blank expression. Then the young man snapped once again, socking the all-powerful Constellation in the face for being so annoying. Outside the Chamber of Constellations, the security team and instructor Egun have been waiting for a while now. He was secretly hoping that this thing wouldn't go sideways or anything like that. The agonizing wait was finally over as the main door of the chamber creaked open. Joo Hyuk came out of the facility, and the security team started patting him down and scanning if he took some Valhalla property. I gotta ask him if he tried anything funny, and he naturally insisted that he didn't. His official story was that he just looked around. If he went down further, his mind would have been broken into a million fragments by now, right? Egun bought his reasoning and acting and urged him to go back to the dorms. As the young man walked away, the instructor just couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Joo Hyuk casually strolled towards the dormitory in the middle of the night. He recalled his conversation with Varsh inside the mental realm. He doesn't care that his main rival turned into a godlike being. He just needed an explanation for a question nagging him. Varsh should be the one making those notification windows pop up, right? End King's answer was short and simple. He doesn't know either. That nonchalant attitude seriously pissed off Joo Hyuk, grabbing the deity by the collar as Varsh hurriedly insisted that he had no idea. Ever since the martial god killed him, he's been inside this endless space of light for 3 centuries without any power. Sensing the truth in his voice, Joo Hyuk lets go. He asked who was behind it then, but Varsh doesn't know that either. In fact, he also got the mysterious notifications. His window just told him to get in contact with the reincarnated God Hyun-oh Kim and reclaim his memories. But thanks to that, Varsh might have an idea as to who's pulling the strings behind the scenes. This might be the work of the one who made him the master of the Tower of the End. As for who that powerful is, even the End King doesn't exactly know. All his memories related to that figure are completely wiped out. His lost memories aren't coming back all at once. Maybe piecing together their notifications would shed some light on the case. But Joo Hyuk's window only stated that he needed to reclaim his weapons and memories. He can't read the next part below on account of it being censored. As far as he's aware, all his memories are intact. He remembers everything from 3 centuries ago, as clear as day. Varsh just warned him that he might not be aware of the missing links yet. Now that he's found the weapon, the memories will follow suit. That confused Joo Hyuk. What weapon was this wacko talking about? Well, this endless space is the inner realm of the martial god's weapon, a sword of enlightenment. Varsh turned into a constellation after using the sword as a divine artifact. Hearing that made Joo Hyuk's blood boil with rage once again. This guy dared to make his sword a permanent address. After another beat-up session, we go back to Joo Hyuk's walk back home. All this divine artifact and constellation business are certainly screwed up. He wanted to destroy the weapon and leave it behind. but he couldn't bear to leave without it. No matter how weak Varch has been nerfed, he was still once called the End King. Also, taking the sword is required to fulfill his new objective. He really had no choice regarding the matter. While he was lost in thought, a brazen voice rudely called to him, asking if he was the top freshman, God Hyun-oh Kim. There was a colorful group of students who had nothing better to do. Some of them looked like they're old enough to be elder of Valhalla. Okay, Tokyo Revengers. Sunrise Clan's eldest son, Lyric Sunrise, a second-year student, has come all the way out to this place to demand some respect from his junior. They don't look like kind seniors. They look like bullies straight out of a manhwa. Lyric didn't like that. Since God Hyun-oh is an underclassman, Lyric demands a proper greeting and introduction. A bald son of a witch stepped up like a tough guy, insisting on taking on the kid. Lifting his covered spear, Baldy wanted to show the difference between freshmen and sophomores. But he immediately got curb-stomped in the chest. God Hyun-oh is down with big talks. He just wanted to make some mongrels bleed.